to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And they got away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing, is a science place, is a scientific fact that we're all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only Protonic reversal. Welcome to it, and additionally, welcome to it. Episode 403, not 493, which I apparently wrote down. I'm giving myself credit for 90 episodes that haven't happened yet, but this show's been around for a bit, so one-man show. Cracks begin to show. Weekend edition of Protonic reversal. I've been trying to do this one for a while. Not too hard, apparently, but I've been trying to do this one for a while to have this fella on. Going to be talking to Freddy from Thank, a great band from the UK. Really excited about that. Before we get into that, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic reversal. I'm your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer who has been touring and recording for 24 years, most known for the band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect, but who may not be household names. This is episode 403. Now, if this is your first time listening to the show, archives of it are available for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding, at protonicreversal.com. However, if you want to support the show and get episodes sooner, you can do so for $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal. And if you like the show or even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, or even leave a review. All of that helps people discover the show, beats back the almighty algorithmic overlords. It's just a darn nice thing to do. So here we are. Thank is a band I heard about for a long time before I ever engaged, I guess. A band from Leeds. And basically it was like, oh, those guys are great. I'm like, cool, I'll be the judge of that. But I love that they have a one-word band name, which is almost impossible to have these days. So that was like my first impression. Then I got to know Freddy a little bit through email and was like, oh, we should do an episode. That was, it seems like several decades ago. But anyway, this is quite the intro. Here we are. Freddy, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. After, however many months we've been trying to make this happen. We did it.
There are people that it's been a longer period, but you're probably top 5. So my apologies on that. Again, I don't have I'm going to fire my assistant.
We're both busy guys. I think
exactly.
It's allowed.
So again, the people that know when I mentioned that you were going to be on, people are like, oh, that's awesome. I love that band. And then a bunch of people are like, wait, who? What? Like, especially, I hate to say it, but especially a lot of the U.S. audience. So why don't you give me like the origin story of how Thank came to be? Because I think it's an interesting band, and you guys are doing something special and cool, but we all know the world we live in. There's a million things all screeching at the same volume all the time, and most of them are terrible. So tell me how Thank came to be.
Sure. So it's a challenging one because we've been a band for like 8.5 years, but right. I feel like it only became like an active concern maybe like 3 years ago. Like prior to that, it was like very, very lazy. We would kind of rehearse when we felt like it. We very rarely toured, and we released music like a very kind of snail pace. But the past like kind of 3 years, we've actually started like treating it like it's a real band. And who could have predicted that when we started treating it like it was a real band?
Yeah, who could have predicted?
Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
like people actually, like other people outside the band, also started to care about it, which is very nice. So yeah, we've been a band for like 8.5 years, but kind of only like a properly active band for maybe like the past 3 years. We've had a few like lineup changes and stuff, but yeah, it's kind of a who's who of like Leeds DIY punk people. So we have Steve Miles on drums now for the past couple of years, who was previously a member of Cattle, who I don't necessarily, again, don't know if your US audience necessarily will be aware, but I feel like maybe 5 or so years ago, in terms of like the UK like underground noise rock scene, they were like they were the kind of bee's knees, and they sadly sort of dissolved over like COVID. But it's fine because we swooped in and poached
You got
them.
it. Exactly.
So,
It worked out great for you, as it turns out.
Yeah, exactly. Almost like I planned the whole thing.
Right, exactly. You're Kaiser Sose in the whole affair.
Yeah.
So yeah, your band really kind of came to my attention with the Thankology, which is that I think it's a combination of the 2 EPs.
Yeah, so it's a compilation of the first tape we did, the 10-inch we released in like 2019, and our side of a split we did with a band called Blom from Newcastle. So it's like our first 3 releases. And honestly, we partly did the Thankology thing because the album was taking longer than we expected, and we wanted to have something.
It's nice to have a thing,
something to distract people, and also partly because most of those releases were like out of print,
hard to find,
and we kind of needed a cash injection to finish paying all the studio costs of the album. But it worked out well. It feels like a lot of people discovered us through Thankology, which is delightful. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. So first of all, that what you say, that is a harsh reality of being in a band, right? It's sort of like the idea is you're usually doing a thing and that kind of pays for the next thing, and in an ideal state. And additionally, it's a lottery for folks' attention these days. So it's kind of funny sometimes what people latch onto, but it is a minor miracle anybody latches on anything at all ever. So it's always like, a lovely thing when you can take something that you're proud of, that you want to share, and it's literally just like, hey, let's have a picture of like a demon in the bathroom as the cover or whatever, and on we go.
Yeah, the front and back cover from that CD were both panels from a comic that I can't remember the name of now off the top of my head, but I was like obsessed with this comic at the time.
It was like a web comic, or was it
Yeah, it's kind of a web comic, but like way more abstract than that, because it wasn't
surrealist. I think I know what you're talking about. I don't remember what it was called.
I think it's like Person 918 is the guy that does it, and it's like, it's not any kind of regular release schedule. It's kind of like sometimes maybe like after a year he's like, oh, here's another
here's a new one,
weird thing. So yeah, but I was obsessed with that particular one of like the demon in the truck stop bathroom.
Right.
Yeah, was really pleased that he was happy for us to use it. Yeah. So I'm glad that we released that compilation when we did. It was kind of I think like during the first like COVID lockdown, Dev from Idols, Adam Devonshire from Idols, made like a Spotify playlist of like his current listening, and at that point, that was at the point when we'd been a band for like 4 years, but still no one really cared very much about us. And for whatever reason,
who cares?
For whatever reason, Dev decided to put a song of ours on that playlist, which
brilliant.
Very much seemed to like really, really boost our kind of internet presence. And then it was kind of soon after that we did the Thankology compilation. So we kind of we rode the wave. Thanks to Dev. He's a nice boy.
He's one of the great awesome dudes of rock music, and one of these days, honestly, I've been going back and forth with him longer than I have with you. Eventually, it's going to happen to have him on the show. But yeah, he's a great fella, and I think people discount how much that kind of platforming helps, especially for lesser known to unknown bands, where it's not about that specific thing getting you this, that, or the other. It's about elevating something just out of this screeching masses of just everything that's happening. That people are like, oh, it won't work if there isn't something there for people to latch onto, but to have somebody advocate and be like, no, y'all check this out. Even if it's like in the context of check out all this stuff, it's a great leg up. And it's something I think some people that have levels of notoriety either don't realize they have that power or just don't think about it in terms but of that way. But I think it's vital for this whole whatever it is we do to work.
Totally. And I think Dev is an example of someone who is just like really good at wielding that kind of influence that he has. I think he has an awareness of that. And yeah, I think he is someone who maybe his taste in music is somewhat like harder edged than the music he makes.
Yes,
so he makes a lot of, he does a lot for kind of weirder and darker and noisier bands. And yeah, gets them platforms. It's he's doing the Lord's work. No,
and that always deserves. I have time for anyone that will take the time to do that. Yeah, I mean, look at even Springsteen, right? Bruce Springsteen he's a constant devourer of music, much weirder usually than the music he's making, and he'll go out of his way to give big ups to it's like Suicide or something along those lines, right? Where it's like, oh, Bruce Springsteen's repping Suicide. That's why.
Oh, sure. Have I imagined this, or has he recorded a cover of Frankie Teardrop?
He did, yeah, and it's pretty good. But it was like definitely like I was like, haha, that's a funny joke. Oh wait, no, it really exists. Oh, crazy. Oh, yeah. Okay, I mean that's like Robert Palmer doing New Day Rising, which is like I was like, haha, and they're like, no, you want to see the video? I'm like, what, really? The Husker Du song, Robert Palmer? Okay.
Yeah, it's. I think. I guess like the equivalent for you guys in the US would be when like the AV Club did. Oh God, I can't remember what it was called. There was like a YouTube series that AV Club used to do that was like they would invite bands in
undercover
like
maybe or something.
Yeah, that was it, AV Undercover.
Yeah.
But like in the UK we have so Radio 1, which is like probably the biggest radio station in the UK.
Sure.
They have like the Radio 1 Live Lounge, which usually, like anyone who does like a live lounge session, I don't know if it's like that they have to do a cover or if that's just something that's become a tradition, but like you get some really like oddball covers from that. And it's always like, it doesn't all work. It isn't all good, but like, so in fact, some of it is like dog shit. But like,
no, for some people, they're just checking the box and fulfilling the criteria, and no one thinks about it ever again, right? But but
there's some amazing stuff in there. Like I think I actually one thing that I wish we did more of as a band is cover songs. I think it's like. It's a surprisingly hard thing to do, especially when you're. I think like you get a false impression when you're like a teenager playing in like a garage band. You get like a false impression of how easy it is to incorporate like cover songs into a set because maybe the standard, like for your original stuff, the standard that you're holding yourselves to isn't particularly high. So the standard of cover songs doesn't need to be that high either.
Right.
And then like when you get to a point, maybe by the time you're in your like mid-20s or whatever, and you're maybe there's like a lot more ambition to the kind of songwriting and the kind of arrangements and things like that you're trying to do. Trying to like write and rehearse and record all that, and also trying to orchestrate like getting some cover songs in the mix. It's really hard. Like I can't remember the last time that Thank did any kind of cover song. We tried a couple of years ago. We started recording a cover of Danger High Voltage by the Electric Six, but we never actually finished it.
Oh,
I think
nice.
that would have been really good.
Yeah.
But, alas, maybe one day we'll finish it. I think like we recorded like the drums and the synths for it, and
Right.
then we got busy. Maybe I'll just release that.
Just the drums and synth version. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but I think there's also, and when you're a working band that's has any material at all, like it's also like, well, do we want to spend time on this, or do we want to spend time on our songs and doing and for me that always tends to be the crux of it. And usually it's like, well, I think I'd rather work on our stuff, but every once in a while we'll post something. I mean, we did a do you know that band The Knife?
Yeah.
We did a cover of Pass This On, and like it's all guitars and it sounds like Thin Lizzy or something, right? And I felt very good about that because I love that band, and it was not a band that people would think that I would love, but I was like, oh, I want to do it, but I want to do it in this style. And so like I feel like it's easier if you have like a conceit or something with that, like, oh, we're gonna do this thing to kind of put our brand on it, rather than just like, yes, I like that song too, that sounds like it, you know, which can work fine live, but as a recording usually it's like, all right, guys.
Although I think the one situation where that is good, just doing like a really faithful cover, is like when it's kind of completely unexpected. So I heard
like a breaker almost. Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I heard like I don't know how I stumbled upon this. I hasten to add that this is not the kind of thing that I would usually be listening to. Sure. But I heard Harry Styles do a cover of Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel. And it was completely, he didn't change anything. It was like super faithful.
Yeah.
It like down to like the like flute sample like synth part. And it was like amazing.
Yeah.
Partly just because I was like, wow, like the idea that Harry Styles and his band have like,
he knows who Peter Gabriel is. Yeah, amazing.
And like spending the time to do this like super faithful cover of that song,
which is a weird
like,
song.
amazing.
Like if you stop and kind of break that song down, it's very strange. Like and I mean that as a compliment. Like it's not, and that's something that I think a lot of times, you know, the people that aren't familiar with his earlier stuff is like, oh yeah, he was like hard prog for like years, and like, what, really? Is that the same guy? It's like, well, yeah. He just changed it so it's like weird stuff in the arrangements and just like bizarre. So like, why is that come in there? You know, like who knows? But it obviously worked out very well for him, and it's very smart music. So I think you're onto something there, because it's like that can be something that can reflect. You know, that's the Robert Palmer doing New Day Rising of our day, right? Where it's like, oh, this guy actually, okay, he knows who Husker Du is. All right, cool. And that, but then people are at that level and making that kind of music, they're looking for a different thing than like a down and dirty, like, you know, grindy, noisy band too. And that's why it is good. Like, you know, oh, they got a spot of melody in here. How cool. That's a nice breaker between the next, you know, screeching missive. And I say that as a fan of screeching missives as well. But so I hear what you're saying. And also, and the nice thing about larger bands doing that too is it can kind of bring attention to more obscure bands. And I think that's, you know, that's, again, I'm never going to be mad at that. Or even just like celebrating something that, like, you know, this generation just was never aware of, and then be like, hey, you know, the Replacements are pretty good. You heard of them? It's like, oh yeah, yes, I have. Yes,
I have now. There we go. Yeah, totally. No, I yeah,
I'm more of a Fugazi guy, like, but I like the Replacements. Yeah, you know,
I definitely miss that, like the sort of that attitude of just like farting out covers without really thinking much about it. Like, yeah, being in a band,
it's not a statement.
18 and being like,
yeah,
we'll play this. Why not? Like, rehearse.
It's got a good riff.
Times, like,
yeah,
sure.
Whatever. Yeah,
like, yeah, like so. Me and Lewis, who plays guitar and synth in Thank.
Yeah.
When we were at university, like 12, 13 years ago, there were a couple of local open mic nights where you would get a free drink every time you got up and played, and neither of us were particularly invested in like that kind of heart on the sleeve singer-songwriter stuff
dreadful.
that like lends itself to an open mic night. Right. But we did definitely very much like the idea of free drinks. So we would often go down and like, it's like, okay, we're gonna go to the bar at like 8. Let's meet up at 6 and figure out a couple of cover songs, play them through once, and then go down. And it must have been terrible. Like I was at like a God, can I share this? Yeah. I was at like a wedding recently. I feel like the people whose wedding it was aren't going to listen. They're not going to listen to this. I was at a wedding recently where it was like the wedding band was like the groom and his mates. And they'd clearly like rehearsed maybe like 40 minutes of material. And then I think my assumption was like, after that was like, okay, now we're going to get like a DJ doing like cheesy wedding disco.
Yeah, the things you expect to see at a wedding. Yeah.
It was just 3 more hours of the groom and his mates basically just like jamming, like not like jamming like free jazz or like Grateful Dead or whatever. It was like one of them being like, oh, do you guys know this? And like trying to teach the other guys a riff on the fly. And then them jamming that song for like 10 minutes and then doing another one. And it was like, as well, because I was at this wedding and it was raining outside, so I couldn't go out to the smoking area or whatever.
Right.
I was like, well, I guess I'm just stuck here for 3 hours.
Captive audience, yeah.
And it made me realize that, like, being at that wedding reception made me realize how terrible it must have been for the people witnessing me and Lewis and our mates crashing these open mic nights like 12 years ago. It just made me feel
shambling in and doing the thing. Yeah.
Made me feel like retroactively guilty about that. So I'm sorry to anyone who was at the Calvino's open mic night in Scarborough circa 2012.
Yeah.
I owe you an apology, all of you.
We regret the error. Yeah. Well, and that's by the way, the ideal situation for the performer in that case is, yes, a captive audience. Like, nobody can leave, but that sounds like a circle of hell for my personal sensibilities.
It was in like a tiny church.
Like, your wedding gift is I'm watching this thing, man. That's
exactly. It was in like a tiny church. So it's this really like reverberant space. So it was really like
great.
You weren't just hearing it; you were really
feeling it. Yeah.
And then it was like all the furniture in this place seemed to be far bigger than it needed to be. So basically, once you were in, wherever you sat, you were just there.
So there was no locked in, right?
There was no mingling between. It was just everyone was just sat trying to tolerate. Man. Like, I'm trying to think there was a really bad rendition of Psycho Killer, and there was also like oh God, what's that song that's like the bass line is like and it has I'm really doing a bad job of representing what this is. It has like a brass part that's like like, and the vocal is like a kind of I don't know what the words are, but it's like yeah. You know,
Lowrider. By War. Is that it?
That's it. Yeah, that sounds right. I swear they were like jamming that for like 20 minutes, and like the father of
that's it. Yeah. Okay.
The father of the bride was like playing a conga with
I saw Phantomas do that song like as a tag for one of their songs, which I was like,
that sounds much better.
It was great, but I was like surprised to hear it. But I was like, oh, this is a very Mike Patton thing to do. But okay, cool, right on.
Hell yeah! Well, he has the vocal range for the that like gruffness.
Killed it. Yes, absolutely.
I can believe it.
But wedding band version of War is like maybe less good.
Well, it's just that I think only one of them actually knew how it went.
Oh,
and
no.
The rest of them were just kind of vibing it.
Stop.
That was the main issue.
Rotten. Not good.
But anyway, I should probably stop bitching about this wedding. Like I say, I don't think either of the couple will be listening to this, but nonetheless, it feels quite gauche for me to just be here like this fucking wedding.
Well, it's the next hour of lighting them up. No, it's fine.
Exactly.
I took you down there. It's not that you don't love and appreciate them, but as a celebration of a union, perhaps was maybe a bit of a misstep to That's a long time. I mean,
You know
honestly,
what? They
when you
were
said,
having a good time. They were having a good time.
I think my personal attention span for something like that, probably 15 to 20 minutes. And then after that, I'm like, oh, what are we still doing this? But
Honestly, like, I feel so bad about this as someone who is like involved in live music. But
Yeah.
I basically don't want to watch any band for longer than like 40 minutes.
oh, my
Like
man,
even my
yes.
favorite, like even if it's my favorite band, I'm like,
You better be like
yeah,
Tom
I've seen it now.
Waits or Sparks, or I'm trying to think who's left. Like you better be like an artist that has like such a deep catalog that spans like multi decades and I want to hear every single one. Otherwise, it's like 29-minute mark. I'm like, wrap it up.
Yeah.
You know?
I think like in my opinion, the world would be a better place if every gig was a 2-band bill. The opening band played 25 minutes and the headlining band played 40 minutes, and then we all went home.
Yeah.
That's like that's my ideal.
Well,
Which
there's
I'm
something
aware
to be said
that's
for
never
that.
going to happen.
But unless you're like, I don't know, King Crimson or something, their songs are like 9 minutes long. Like, do you want to leave people being like, wow, that was great, I really enjoyed that, or wow, this is great, when is it going to be over? Like, what feeling do you want to leave people with? Because
I think we did take that too far at one point though. So I think was it Falco who originally put us in contact?
Oh yeah,
with each
yeah,
other?
it was Falco.
I
Yeah,
think
you're
it would
right.
have been. So about 10 years ago, a band I used to be in called Pink Rick, which is kind of a precursor to Thank. The first time I ever shared a bill with Falco was Pink Rick opened for Future of the Left about 10 years ago, and we thought we were being really like clever and kind of like standoffish. We played for like 12 minutes, and that was the whole set. And all that really meant is actually just that Falco ended up missing our set because he went for a pre-gig run, and then he was in the shower. He was like, "Oh, it's all right. I'll catch the second half of the set."
The tail end. Sure.
And he missed the whole thing. But you know, subsequently, he has asked other bands of mine to open for them on numerous occasions. So he can't. It can't have left that bad of an impression. But yeah, I think we took the short and sweet thing a little bit too far. Maybe that day.
Yeah.
I think we played 3 songs and we were like, "That's your lot. See you later."
Well, and I think that, and that for bigger shows, I don't know what size show that was, but for bigger shows where there's like production and schedule and stuff, that can really screw people up too. With like, what? Well, they're supposed to be on for their 10 minutes, you know? Like, everyone gets like start jumping up and down like video game characters about it, and it's like, what are you doing?
Oh, for sure. Like sorry, this is going to sound so like name droppy, and I don't.
It's fine, man.
It's like, so I used to play guitar in a band called Beige Palace, and we did a tour with Shellac in like 2019.
Oh, fantastic.
Which was really cool.
Yeah.
But I think we were given like an hour every night, and I think the longest we played at any show was like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And no one told us until like the last show of the tour that apparently like, I don't think anyone had been annoyed, but like, I think like everyone had been like a little bit confused by like why we kept finishing 20 minutes early. We thought we were like being helpful, like giving longer.
Yeah, you're not overstaying your welcome.
And
sure.
And it was like the last show of the tour, someone was like, yeah, like they keep finishing 20 minutes early every night. And we were like, I didn't know there's a problem. I'm sorry.
You think you're being cordial and not being,
I thought I was being considerate.
Right,
but,
sure. Yeah.
Alas. I think they still liked us, but yeah, I was like,
that's funny.
You could have said at the first show, man. This is
exactly.
I think it was like
just tell us,
maybe like 8 gigs, 7 or 8 gigs. I was like, come on, man.
Well, and that's
so
a nice
chances.
thing. That's a nice thing when it's like a 2-band bill too, right? Where it's like you have the ability to kind of get more of a. It's like the opposite of the South by Southwest mentality, where it's like a conveyor belt. We're like, all right, next act, you know, and that's, I mean, which is a special kind of torture if you ask me. But I generally gravitate towards that myself, and the rare exception is when, this is like a 4-banger bill. Like all 4 of these bands are fantastic, and like they're all playing like, you know, half-hour sets. Okay, cool. That I can get into. But there's a lot of times people think they're doing that, and it's like, are you though? Are you?
Yeah, I mean, I sound like such a curmudgeon, but yeah, I'd like,
You're in a safe space,
you
my
know,
guy. Yeah.
don't like 25 minutes and
It's
done.
enough, isn't it? Yeah.
That's all. I think that's partly why I have gotten so I've lived in Leeds for like 10 years, and over my time living in Leeds, I've grown more and more fond of grindcore. There's like a very
Oh
thriving
man. Talk about a
grindcore
12-minute
scene in
set.
Leeds.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it's great. You'll have like a 6-band bill, but they're all playing for like 10
Yeah,
minutes.
every
Like,
song's 45 seconds and it's over,
it's
longer it takes for a
amazing.
bathroom break.
Like I would say, and if you're at all interested in grindcore and power violence, like Leeds for whatever reason
It's a hotbed
seems
for
to
you.
have like developed a particularly like weird like breed of grindcore as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the best way I can describe it is that it's like the slapstick comedy of grindcore to me is like the kind of that's like classic like Leeds style grindcore. Is
Right,
like,
right. Well, it's a
you can
genre that
imagine-
lends itself well to that. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't
if
want to
you can
sound
imagine
reductive,
like
but-
grindcore that would soundtrack an episode of Mr. Bean, then that's like the
Sounds fantastic.
yeah.
I'm into it.
It's amazing. There's some incredible Leeds grindcore bands.
So, back to your band,
Yes.
which
Yeah,
is called
I
Thank.
forgot why I was here for a minute.
So thoughtless cruelty. So the Thankology was kind of to like help pay for the thoughtless cruelty, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
So that came out early 2022. Yeah. So tell me about this record. It's a cool record, and I think for me, again, I kind of came to you guys kind of late. It kind of seemed like, oh, you guys have a thing really kind of sorted here. You got it kind of locked in and figured out, and everybody's on board with it. Cool record.
Thank you.
So tell me about this. Tell me about the Thoughtless Cruelty record.
So that was our first like proper full length album. It was very much like a product of the circumstances that it was made in. So it's kind of like it was most of it. I think we had like 1 or 2 songs written like pre-pandemic, but most of it was written during 2020. And as well, it was so. I mean, we all contribute to songwriting. Like, everyone kind of brings their own thing to the table, but like the initial idea for a song usually comes from either me or Lewis, who I mentioned earlier. And like writing Thoughtless Cruelty was during a period where like I guess like Lewis just was like suffering from pretty bad writer's block. So it's kind of a strange record because it's like by far the most written by me. It's like the least collaborative thing we've done.
By necessity, because of not being able to even.
Because Lewis was just like struggling to kind of get the ideas out there, and also because we weren't really in the same room very much,
Which is hard. What are you gonna do? Exactly.
Yeah. So like, I really like that record, but I think that it suffers from lack of as much input from the other guys. I'm like, even though like I'm kind of the main songwriter of the band, everything that the other guys bring to it is always what elevates it and always what makes the songs like good and exciting.
Sure,
so the fact that not to say that the other guys didn't have any input on that record, but the fact that it was so like such a kind of insular like writing experience, to me it loses like a little bit of the fun and excitement of like the stuff that we did before that album and the stuff that we've worked on subsequently. So it's kind of a strange record because it like, I feel like that is the album that sort of brought us up a level. Like Dread, one of the singles off that album, did like really well on the radio in the UK. I mean, like comparatively, it wasn't like,
Sure, well,
I'm not saying it was on like Radio 1 drive time. but it
Thinking
was, like,
Harry Styles. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it did like, for a band like us, it did like extremely well on the radio.
Right.
So I feel like that album is what led to us now playing the kind of gigs that we're playing. Like
Yeah.
these days, we either play at like bigger venues, or we're playing like the venues we used to play, but now they're like
The shows are bigger,
like
better.
overflowing, like packed out shows. If we're
Great.
if we're playing at the small venues, and
Yeah.
if we're playing at the bigger venues, then it's maybe not so much. But like previously, we wouldn't have been able to,
But it's
play
not
those
an
places
embarrassment
at all.
either. Like there's
Yeah.
more, right?
So
Which sometimes that's all about, just avoiding feeling bad about yourself.
totally. So I think like I'm really glad we made that record, and I'm really glad that it resonated with people. But in some ways, I actually even feel like Thoughtless Cruelty is like a gateway for a lot of people. Then went and listened to Thankology and were like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" And I have to admit, like personally, I prefer like the Thankology stuff as well. So it's kind of
Well, it's live tested
it's
too, right? That's always going to matter.
that was it. Like out of the 9 songs on Thoughtless Cruelty, I think only 2 of them had been played live before we
Yeah.
recorded them, and like so it's just it was a strange experience writing it, and it was like a much less collaborative experience, but it was like a really cool proof of concept that we were actually able to make like an album as
That
a
you
body
could
of
do
work.
it. You
'Cause,
proved that
like,
you could do it. Sure. Yeah.
Prior to that, like everything we'd done previously, both of the EPs that we did had been intended to be albums, and then it just was taking us too long to write an album's worth of songs we were happy with. So we were like,
Sure.
fuck
yeah.
it, we'll just record this and put it out.
Yeah.
So actually being able to do like that size of a body of work and like make and release an album was great, and the kind of the level that it's brought us to is great, and I'm really pleased with like how it sounds. I think like Rob Slater, who was actually playing drums in the band at that time.
Blacklisters does Blacklisters.
I think he produced or like co-produced Fantastic Man.
The what? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So he was briefly playing drums in Thank as well. He wasn't actually in the band for very long.
Oh,
but
word.
he played drums on that record, but he's produced like pretty much everything we've done. And I think he did such an amazing job on Thoughtless Cruelty. And yeah, I think it's Fantastic Man that he worked on, and maybe the Dart EP as well. Although I'm not 100% sure.
That sounds
He's
right.
like-
You
he's
think
great.
I would?
He, like,
We talked about this one at Steven on it, and I don't know. Sometimes I recall information, sometimes I don't. So, but
I get it.
It's a lot of episodes of this show.
Yeah, I think, and just as like it got a bit more like high concept than the previous stuff. There's like,
Yeah.
I got like really obsessed with like, so I was brought up a Catholic, and then I kind of went away from that, and then during like 2020 COVID stuff, not that I became religious again, but I got really obsessed with like reading like weird Catholic literature and stuff.
Oh,
and so
sure.
there's loads of that like thematically in Thoughtless Cruelty, and loads of just stuff about like the apocalypse, and just it's all just like very like really pretentious, but like quite fun high concept stuff. So
yeah, it's a little doomy in that way, but like not like overtly so.
Sure.
I mean, it's also it's a little more melodic too, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, there's singing on it, which is which there isn't any singing on Thankology really.
Right. It's more of a. I think some might call it a caterwaul. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, I'm really proud of that record, but I think for me, I think it isn't the record that we would have made if
the situation was different.
Yeah.
Cool.
But
sure.
It's cool, and it's brought us to where we are now, and I think what's going to be nice with the new record that we're about to put out is that it's going to be the first time in a while that we're like touring a record with the same lineup that recorded that record.
Sure.
So all the touring,
yeah.
Like when we were touring Thoughtless Cruelty, it wasn't the lineup that had recorded Thoughtless Cruelty.
Yeah.
And when we were touring Please, which was the 10-inch we did before that, it wasn't the lineup that had recorded
It actually did it.
So I'm really excited for the first time ever to be
here's the
touring.
band. This is what we sound like and what we
with
look
the
like.
band that actually recorded the record.
What a treat.
Yeah, like it seems like it shouldn't be that hard, and yet.
Yeah. So tell me, so before we start talking about I have a physical body that can be harmed, tell me about Torture Cube, because that came out. Was it last year? I guess it was like summer.
Yeah,
last
I
year,
think
right?
like last July maybe.
that sounds right.
Yeah, so that was Torture Cube and Dead Dog in a Ditch was like a double A side 7-inch that we did. Those were the first two songs we wrote when Steve, the drummer who I mentioned was previously in Capital, those are the first two songs that we wrote when he was in the band, and we were given this opportunity. Again, we were talking about like bigger bands platforming small bands and wielding their kind of influence.
Wielding their influence for good.
So there's a Leeds band called Yard Act, who you might have heard of, who certainly in the UK are like massive now.
Okay.
I don't know if they are in the US, but they've got like huge in the UK.
Or let's put it this way, I don't know them. That doesn't mean they aren't huge. I've got a very narrow perspective.
Yeah. But they're kind of like like indie rock, post-punk kind of band.
Oh, okay. Sure.
But their singer was like a roommate of mine like 10 years ago. And they, for a while, were doing so they're signed to like Island Records, obviously quite a big label. But for a while they had like Yard Act had their own imprint called Zen FC. I think technically it still exists, but they're not really doing it at the moment. But for a while they were like releasing. It was almost like a singles club, I guess, where they were like finding smaller bands they liked and like releasing 7-inches. So
fantastic.
We had an opportunity to do a Zen FC 7-inch, and we were like, okay, well, we've written 2 songs since the album, so I guess that's gonna be.
That's what's gonna be. It's gonna be this.
And that was really fun. Like that was the first time we recorded with Steve. It was really nice to be recording stuff that we had written like together in the room again.
Right.
When we recorded it, we were just like in a really good place as a band. Like we were super tight. I think we had come back from tour. Like I think we'd been away on tour. We got back at like 2 a.m. on the Sunday night, and then we were in the studio all day Monday recording that 7-inch. So
wow! So you were very fresh at it then.
Yeah, we were like, that's it. Let's fucking go. Yeah. So yeah, like it was a really fun experience, and like really cool that we were able to do the Zen FC 7-inch thing. And yeah, like Dead Dog in a Ditch, the kind of like, it's not really the B-side because it was a double A, but the sort of the less palatable of the 2 songs, the one that didn't really get any radio play, that is actually on the new album as well.
I was gonna say,
re-recorded that for the new album,
right.
But yeah, like Torture Cube was a fun one. Very strangely, again, I feel like I'm bringing in so many like UK specific references here, but like, do you know the comedian Frank Skinner?
I do not.
He's like a mainly famous in the 90s, I guess. Okay. But he was part of a double act called Skinner and Badil, and they in the 90s did the like World Cup song, the ball's coming home, it's coming home, it's coming home. And for whatever reason, so Frank Skinner has a radio show now. That's, I guess, what he's doing in his like latterly. And for whatever reason, Torture Cube got played on Frank Skinner's radio show, which was like very surreal. So I just got this, like, oh yeah, by the way, Frank Skinner's just played you on the radio this weekend.
Yeah, what, really?
Sure, fine, all right,
sure,
if you insist. But,
yeah, it seems
so.
Okay.
Yeah, that was cool, but just like, I feel like that 7-inch was a lot of things falling into place. So like George Chadwick, who we have now worked with subsequently on videos, he did the video for Torture Cube, and like a lot of the way we've ended up working on the new album is kind of what we did on that 7-inch. So like Joe Osborne, who mastered that 7-inch, has now mastered the album. So yeah, it feels like, so I'm like a big Pavement fan, and I love their whole discography, But I think if you like read into like the sort of inner workings of that band, they weren't really like a band until Wowie Zowie, which is like their third album.
They were more of a
Prior to that, it
shambolic
was, like,
collection of personalities before that. Yeah.
And so to some extent, like that Torture Cube 7-inch to me feels a bit like,
Oh, this is where it kind of like comes
it's like,
together.
oh, like
Sure,
we're like actually a band now.
Yeah.
Like Thoughtless Cruelty, obviously, and like Thankology, obviously, like, you know, I mean, they exist. We did them. We wrote some songs and we recorded some songs and we released them.
Yeah.
But it was, like very, very shambolic, very like all over the place. Whereas,
Can I tell you, briefly
Go
interject,
ahead.
Pavement
Go ahead.
from the next town over from where I grew up. But I did not have the slightest clue that that was happening until I moved to the Bay Area. And then I was like, oh, they're Stockton? Like, that's like the next town over.
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah.
Because it's not, let's put it charitably, the part of California that I grew up in, not where a lot of good bands come from. But you had Pavement, and you had Granddaddy was from the town that I came from. That's Korn, Bakersfield, further down the valley.
Hell yeah. I don't know if you know this, but I feel like I've irritated people on the internet quite a lot by talking about the similarities between nu metal and noise rock.
Oh, yeah. Some people get really
Positively.
irritated by that. Yeah.
People get really angry about that, but I'm a Korn defender to the end.
Yeah. I got friends that are as well. You know, Stin from Chat Pile very unabashedly is and for me, I wish to exit the discourse the second it happens. Also, it's interesting to see that movie that music reevaluated with modern sensibility as just the music, because culturally that was like, you know, that was like rape rock. That was like, as for sensibility, it was like the opposite of whatever Shellac and Jesus Lizard and Steel Pole Bath and Melvins were. But like, I can recognize that, you know, people's engaged with music, right? As long as Fred Durst doesn't get rehabilitated. That's a bridge too far for me. I'm like, no.
There's the sonic similarities. I think for me as well. So it's like,
but I had that first Korn tape. Like I got it, and I was like, oh, there's a band from Bakersfield.
I mean,
Cool.
I promise I'm not gonna drag you into
You're
this
fine.
discourse, but
It's
like,
fine.
so for me, I heard like nu metal. I think it was like the summer 2001. I had
Sure.
like an older cousin who played me Linkin Park Hybrid Theory, and I would have been like 8
sure.
years old, and like, so for me, I was hearing all this stuff outside of that like cultural context.
You
of it
didn't
being,
have.
like,
You were
this-
just hearing it for the music. Sure.
Yeah, I didn't hear like the cultural baggage. So for me, like, like Linkin Park Hybrid Theory was like my way into like,
And everybody
kind of-
starts somewhere, right? And that's
Yeah.
that's another thing I think people get really on their high horse about. And it's like, well, okay, like you can diss how people got in the door, but like not everybody was born cool. Not everybody was born working at a record store, man. Come on. Like,
well, and as well, like to this day, I will say that System of a Down Toxicity is one of the greatest albums ever made. That was maybe, I'd say like Hybrid Theory was my way in. Toxicity was like, I heard that album and I was like, okay, now I have to dedicate my entire life to like shouty music.
Right.
So, and I like, to this day, I'm like, that is maybe like the greatest like heavy metal album ever made. Like certainly,
right.
Easily top 5.
Well, and then folks that are like, you know, maybe a little bit older will like talk trash and whatnot. But it's like, dude, you're into like this ridiculous hair metal though. Like somehow that's better. Like that's
exactly.
trash in a different way. I mean, like, and I mean, also it's just let people like what they like too. Jesus Christ, it gets so exhausting. People policing everybody's tastes. Like, okay, like who cares? Like although I say that now, about the time you were getting into that music in 2001, woo boy, did I have some opinions about literally everything. I mean, yeah, and some of which I was like, wow, what an idiot I was. But
we all go through those phases. I definitely have been a music snob. I would like to think that I'm not anymore. Me and my fiance have like a strange dynamic where like we have very similar taste in music, but I think like I think because like I studied music at university, she has this idea in her head that I like am enjoying music in a much like more advanced way than
it's
she is.
elevated. Yeah, exactly.
So even though like so much of the music I like is just fucking stupid.
Yeah,
it's
just
like
idiocy
absolutely
personified.
like
But yeah.
idiotic music. And I'll say that to Sarah, and she'll be like, "Well, yeah, totally." But like, I feel like you're enjoying the stupidity in like a really intellectual way. Like you've got some really intellectualized reasons. I'm like, no, like,
not really. Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm enjoying how dumb it is. And
It's mostly just dumb. Yeah.
yeah,
No, but it's also, I mean, there's something to be said for that too. Like, I mean, I heard Refuse before I heard Nation of Ulysses, right? And I was like, oh my God, this is the best band I've ever heard. And I'm like, oh, okay, they like Nation of Ulysses a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But then, I'm sorry, if you hear that riff of, you know, ding, 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 and it's like, you're going to tell me that's not cool. That's great. Like,
it is
you know,
great.
like how are you going to open up the haterade on it, you know? And there's things that, you know, why do I like that song? And I hate like a lot of new metal bands do the same thing. I don't know. But it's also fine. I'm trying to come at things from like a place of curiosity rather than judgment these days. And
Yeah,
I can definitely be like, I could see why people would dig this. It doesn't connect with me personally, and that's fine. But
there's quite often no rhyme or reason for these things. Like, yeah, I was chatting to a friend earlier today. He was talking about the band Ghost. Like,
oh, sure. Yeah.
I don't even know what they're not really like power metal. What are they like?
I wish I
like
loved anything as
spooky-
much as like old metal dudes love talking about how Ghost is false metal. I'm like, I don't care. I
Like-
misunderstand how much I appreciate your categorization of what is and is not false metal, because I don't care about it at all.
Oh, for sure. Like, I think
I'm
what
so mad about it.
what I was talking to my friend Callum about earlier was just like, I don't like Ghost, but I have no idea why. Because there's
Same,
so much
yeah.
stuff that like
I'm like, seems like I'd
there's
like
so
it.
much stuff that's like, so for example, like I love like King Diamond.
Sure.
And I'm kind of like, well, what's the only difference is like, it's particularly like the 80s King Diamond records that I like. And it's like, the only difference really with that is the production values. And is it just that I can only enjoy something like that if it's like recorded in that kind of ramshackle way? And
Yeah, hot dog in a hallway.
as soon as it sounds too good, I'm like,
right.
no way. And I'm not choosing to feel that way, but I'm just like,
I mean,
there's something just really off-putting about. Well, it's similar to like, I've always found it really difficult to get into any bands where the singer is too good. I can't.
Okay.
I can't hack like good singing. Something that immediately turns me off about someone who can actually sing. That's
hilarious.
Which is so like so self-defeating, and it's not like I'm not choosing to be this way, but I just immediately find like polished, finesse singing.
Yeah, polished, overly consonant. Like, it's just a lot. To me, it always the thing I used to say, and we'll still bring it now and again, is like, oh, this is music for middle managers, is what I'll say. You know, and there's something about that I just find completely offensive to my sensibilities. You know, throwing Merciful Fate all day long, twice on Tuesday, great, no problem. But yeah, like if that like stuff you'd hear at the car dealership. No, man, miss me with that. Sorry.
Yeah, I've recently heard someone describe Sleep Token as co-worker music. Something like,
oh man, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Sometimes I miss reviewing records, and if I hear someone drop something like that, then I'm like,
yeah.
And it's the only time. The rest of the time, I'm like, nah, I don't miss it. But anyway, that was quite the derivation. So you're talking about how Torture Cube is sort of Pavement coming together, but Thank in this case, like as a band.
Yeah, that's how it felt. If that's not too self-aggrandizing,
that's fine. I mean, like, this is the place to aggrandize all you want.
If I'm gonna make myself sound cooler than I am, then where better than Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal?
We're a grandize core here.
Yeah.
So you heard a grind core. This is a grandize core.
Exactly.
So, but it makes sense, right? Because I remember when I heard that, I was like, oh, this is cool. This is intense. This is like I see where they may be going with this, and so hence the new record, I Have a Physical Body That Can Be Harmed. it feels like, again, that you guys have it locked, but in a different way. Like it's hitting, and it probably a little closer to how the band presents live, I would imagine. I mean, I haven't seen you, but
It's like very much like I think so. On Thoughtless Cruelty, we were very conscious. We deliberately were trying not to make like a band in the room style record,
right.
Whereas like this time with the new album, we're like, yes, this is a band in the room
Time to do
record.
that, yes.
And it was like almost entirely recorded live. Obviously, there's overdubs and stuff, but like it is about as close as you can get to being like a band in the room record without it literally just being like live.
Like here's a mic up in the practice space. Right,
yeah.
exactly.
And it feels like very, like locked in. It feels like we're in a good place, and it really, I mean, I'm still writing all the lyrics, but musically, it feels like the most collaborative thing we've done. It was almost like an equal like 4-way split. Like we in between recording that 7-inch and the album, we went from being a 5-piece to a 4-piece. But like, yeah, with the four of us with this new album, it really felt like a very like equal division of labor, and it really feels like everyone, like you can, to me at least, knowing all four of us, it feels like you can really hear the four individuals in there.
Right.
Like I often
the personalities of the musicians within, sure. Yeah.
And like, when we're on tour, quite often we'll usually have like a van playlist, and it's like kind of hilarious how easy it is to immediately recognize who has put a song on the playlist. Like I feel like the four of us we each have like such a distinct like personal brand.
Yeah.
So yeah, the fact that you can hear all four of those things like on the record is, yes, I mean, I'm really, really happy about.
Well, yeah, and that's some people look at that, as a negative. I think that's very much a positive when you're talking about a collaborative enterprise, right? Like it's like everyone's coming up with their own thing, and then everyone sabotages each other's ideas until it becomes the thing that it is.
For sure. Like, and I think we're all just like quite idiosyncratic players, and it kind of forces us all to go in certain directions with things. Like, the thing that made it really easy to make Thoughtless Cruelty was that Rob, who was playing drums for us at the time, if you brought him a song, he would play the drums exactly as you expected him to play the drums, and that made it really easy with that record because we hadn't like really been playing together, so we hadn't rehearsed ahead of time.
Sure.
We just got in the studio, and whereas Steve, kind of, you bring a song in, and the chances of him playing anything even close to what you thought he might play are like, But that in itself is amazing, and it pulls
it's just
the songs
a different
in,
vibe, right? Exactly.
It pulls the songs in so many different directions, and it's great. And having been able to write in a room together, that's brought us to, I think, some really interesting places with the songwriting. But yeah, it's like just very, a very idiosyncratic group of musicians, and like, Cameron, the bass player, he has usually, so I was saying like usually the initial idea for a song comes either from me or from Lewis. And usually, I don't know how obvious this is. I've had a couple of people over the years like specifically ask me like, are all of your songs written around the bass line? And they are. So usually like me or Lewis will bring, I feel like it probably is quite obvious if you listen, that like it's all really just about like what's going on with the bass, and everything else kind of,
and how it kind of intermingles,
just darts around that. But like Cameron, although he doesn't usually write the initial thing, he has like such an amazing knack for like adding just little like weird like turnarounds or like a little kind of like just like weird like emphasizing things differently,
Not
and
in
he just,
places
like,
you would expect necessarily. Sure, yeah.
and he just has this incredible knack for it, and it's just like almost upsettingly tight as well. So like I feel like if Cameron ever makes a mistake, it isn't because he didn't know how to play it, it's because you explained the part wrong. That's my,
Sure. No, that's great. Yeah.
If you do a good job of explaining the part, then he will never make it. Like that's how I perceive it anyway. It's just
very
like
very good.
Which is wild, but like, respect.
Well, Freddie, why don't we do this? And again, it depends. It always depends on when people engage with the show. Some people are, first date hits the feed, they're all about it. Some people get to it months later, years later sometimes. But at the time of this recording, with you and I talking, the record is not out yet, but it's going to be out like fairly soon.
Yeah, it's like 5 weeks, I think.
Right. So your call. We don't have to do it, but something I do when there's new records that people seem to get something out of is kind of go through song by song and just give a little bit of insight, where the title came from, lyrics, arrangements, the crazy recording story, whatever. There's no wrong answer. Just give a little bit of insight into it while it's still fresh, while it's, before you have a pat answer for everything that you didn't ever want to say again, so on and so on. Not that would ever happen, of course, but
I would never repeat myself.
No, of course not. How dare you? How dare you imply such a thing? So let's go ahead and go through I Have a Physical Body That Can Be Harmed, track by track. We'll start off with Control. Tell me about Control.
I just before we do that, you sharing your screen here has made me realize that I need to make Woke for Asia public on Bandcamp because it's public everywhere else, but it isn't.
It's on. I was gonna say it's on Spotify. I know that.
It is. Yeah.
I saw it with that.
Got to make it public.
So there you go. I'm doing a service already, everybody.
That's it. You've helped me out. As soon as I come off this call, that's my first task.
Brilliant.
So Control. Obviously, it's the opening song on the record. It is.
That's usually what happens first. Yeah.
Yes. It's, I think, one of the last songs we wrote. Often, I think, like, I used to think that, like, the first song on an album kind of needs to be, like, the biggest banger. But actually, I think what I've realized is that, like, the first song needs to, like, set the tone. And then the second song maybe is, like, the hard hitter. But the first one is just, like, we're setting the tone. We're letting you know what to expect.
Right.
So I think it's like a good tone setter. It's like it's got a very long intro.
Talk about setting the tone. Yeah,
exactly. It's had various different like incarnations. So it started out as, I don't have it here, but I most of the time now I play an Ibanez Iceman guitar. Like
really?
Really like ridiculous, like pointy guitar.
I used to have a Tallman, the Jet King, that was like during their lawsuit period, where it's like, they just shamelessly ripped off Fender and Gibson and like, hey, what about if we put those together and put our logo on it? And they're like, this is a letter from our lawyers. You need to stop doing that. But I love the guitar. It was fantastic.
Hell yeah! I mean, I have a Talman bass, which I also love. But yes, I got this Iceman, and
the Iceman is like a statement guitar, though.
And it's great. It's like, I think it might be the best sounding guitar I've ever owned.
Nice.
It seems wild because I kind of bought it somewhat as a joke, but it like sounds amazing.
And the joke is it sounds fantastic, right?
Yeah, that's it. But so when I got that, I was simultaneously like going through a big like blood incantation phase as a listener, which coincidentally I am now also once again in a big blood incantation phase. But like what would it have been, like 3 years ago when I got this guitar, I was really big into that, and I wrote this like what was me trying to write like a blood incantation rip-off like riff, not intending to use it for anything, but it was like really like ridiculous, like tremolo picked, like evil sounding metal
Right.
riff.
Yeah.
And I kind of had this idea that I wanted to use it for something, but I was like, well, obviously this doesn't sound like Thank. I'll put it to one side and maybe like sometimes you have an idea and you put it to one side and like 6 months later it presents itself as like, oh yeah, this is what I need to use it for.
Right.
But eventually I kind of revisited it and changed the like guitar part into a synth part, and it was this kind of sort of almost like Six Finger Satellite style, like goofy, like synth rock thing.
Right.
But
sure.
that didn't really quite seem to work either. And then that riff is now the like main riff in Control.
Okay. Cool.
And the version of the riff in Control was me attempting to write or like force this riff into sounding like, do you know the song Sick by Ceremony?
Oh yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah. I was trying. So it's kind of like that sort of like mid-paced like hardcore thing,
right.
But also like quite krautrocky, and then like the vocals are actually like almost entirely just stolen from a song that we wrote for the last record that we didn't end up using. And I was like, I like these lyrics, but I kind of hate this song. So the lyrics for Control are almost entirely just like, I've not even really changed them very much. They've just been
it's a lift and shift,
been imported from another song. So it's like kind of a Frankenstein thing. But
you know what? I'm a fan of that though, because there have been times, sometimes like you're like, oh, that's a great, even if it's like, you know, a couple lines, like that's great. It didn't really do what I thought it would do on that, or that song just like nobody cares about it, whatever. It's like, well, just have it show up again, whatever. Who cares? Like that's
totally.
But are the lyrics cops gonna come find you and arrest you?
Yeah, it's like when I think I used to be really coy about doing stuff like that, but then it's like, well, it's still like the previous song that I've nicked it from was also my song.
Yeah, well, exactly. Who
Not,
cares?
I've not stolen it from someone else. Like they're still my lyrics.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Control.
Good lyric is a good lyric.
I think as well, like it's actually the first song we ended up recording for the album. We tried recording Do It Badly first, I think. Yeah, I think it was Do It Badly, whichever song it was. On the first day of tracking, we like spent most of the day just setting up and getting everything sounding good.
Yeah.
And then we were like, we're going to aim to try and record one song before the end of the day today. And that'll be like, we don't need just one. And whatever it was just was like not coming together at all. It was feeling really bad and like just like
not doing it what you wanted to do.
We couldn't get the feel right. We were all just, it was putting us all in like a terrible mood. And then we were like, let's just have a go at Control.
Yeah.
I think it was Do It Badly that we tried to do first because it was the song that required the least in terms of like tech to record.
Yeah.
Like in terms of the live tracking, we weren't tracking any synths live. I think we weren't doing it to a click initially. So we were just like, this is great, just straight in, like just live band in the room thing.
Which if I may interject here, how ironic to be in a song called Do It Badly and not being able to get a good take of it, right?
Oh, I did like, exactly. But it was like, I don't know if we still have any of the recordings of that song from the first day. I'd be intrigued if we do to hear it, but I think they're probably all awful. But anyway, then we were like, fuck it, let's just have a go at Control, see what happens. Yeah. And I think we maybe did it in like 2 takes, and it was just like, this is it. And it was kind of, I remember this beautiful moment where we were all in the control room listening to it. And because, like I said, it has like a very long intro. Mm-hmm. And I think we were looking back to like the take when it got to like the big kind of kick in after this long intro. And I just remember us all kind of looking at each other, like the 4 of us in the band and Rob, who was producing it, and Chris, who was engineering. And we all kind of just looked at like all having this like big beaming smile, just like, this is it. Yeah, this is it. The album isn't going to be terrible. Like, because you know, it really like...
There's that Rubicon you cross too, right? Where you're like, well, I think it's good, but like, I guess we'll see. And then you're like, okay, this is good. Right on.
Especially when you have something like, you know, us trying to record it badly and it just not happening. And us being like,
when you start off bad. Yeah, man.
we were like spending way more on the studio time than we ever have previously. We were like really kind of going all in to try and do something like
extra stress,
to make something really special, like, you know, go into like a really fancy studio, and we were just like, oh fuck. And then we did Control, and we did it. It happened, and it was a beautiful moment.
That's such a nice feeling too, when you're like, oh, thank fuck. Yeah. You know, like we've got something here. Lovely. You know, we can move on.
Yeah, it was real sigh of relief for sure.
So tell me about Woke Frasier, which will be premiering our Bandcamp the second this episode.
Yeah, exactly. So Woke Frasier is, well, we just released it as a single.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw it on the other
3 days before recording this podcast. This is mainly a Lewis composition. I think you can really hear, like, Lewis is like a big, like, techno guy. He really likes a lot of, like,
that,
like, kind of hardware techno, like noisy techno. And you can kind of hear that. I think you can hear the influence of like British Murder Boys or something like that, like techno wise. And yeah, it's just like a really stupid song. I think the title Woke Frasier. So I recently started playing bass in another band called Solderer, just like a really daft like hardcore band. And before Solderer had a name, when we were trying to decide on a name, one of my top suggestions was Woke Simpsons, and no one else really wanted to go with that. And then Woke Frasier was another one. They didn't want to go with that either. So I think the really cool thing about being in more than one project is if everyone in one band turns down one of your stupid ideas,
you can reuse it in another one.
You have a second opportunity. But yes, it's just like a very daft song. I've been like worried that it wouldn't necessarily like land the way I wanted it to land. So kind of the intent behind the song is that it's kind of meant to be, I was trying to do like the Jello Biafra thing of like singing from the perspective of like your enemy, like the person that you're trying to criticize. So it's kind of meant to be sung from the perspective of like a sort of like right-wing grifter podcast host kind of thing.
Right.
Not necessarily a specific one. There's a few that it maybe applies to, but and I just had this idea of like proclaiming that a bunch of absurd things were woke, and just it turning into like I just think because the whole concept of like
everything I don't like is woke. Yes.
Like the way that like the right have like wielded that term is like just so absurd and so meaningless and so like pathetic. So yeah, like one of my favorite lines in it is bad news, your credit card details are now woke and you should send them to me for safe disposal. And but I was worried that people would like interpret it as like an actual like anti-woke anthem, which is not what I was trying to do. But so far, no one seems to have interpreted it in that way, which is I'm glad about. I think hopefully what that means is just that I did the satire well. Like we pitched it right.
It does.
That no one seems to have misinterpreted it yet, but it's one of those where you do kind of once it's out in the world, it's like, well, this is people's to do with whatever they want to do. Like I can't really control how people choose to interpret this.
It'll be first up on the hit parade if you ever run for political office, right? Where it's like, oh, look at this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But
I wrote an entire record about murdering and eating people, so like I'm like fine.
There we go. I haven't yet gone into that kind of subject matter, but maybe next album.
There you go. There's always something for next time, right?
Yeah.
No, I think it comes across. Like it's and again, but that's also people operating in good faith towards the music versus just trying to like look for like the worst possible interpretation of what the thing is.
Yeah, I think like I would like to think that anyone who spends more than 5 minutes like looking at who we are as a band
Yeah.
would find it pretty obvious, like what I'm going for with this. Like, like here is this band who, like, have have frequently been like playing like the like anarchist like squat circuit in France and whatever, and like kind of
It's probably not a first-person narrative, right? It's
yeah.
like,
I would like to think that's obvious.
here are my thoughts on the matter. No, this is an allegory, people. That's
exactly.
It's an allegory, people. Anyway, the aforementioned "Do It Badly" is next. So a little hard time getting this one at first, right?
Yeah, but we got it eventually. I think we did eventually end up recording it to a click. It's kind of this goofy, almost like B-52 sounding thing.
Yeah.
It's something that if we'd have written it for the previous record, I would have been like, no, this isn't a thank song. We can't do this. But like, I think we've managed to like broaden our like palette of sounds in a way that doesn't feel unnatural. It's got this kind of like Devo, like Girl You Want style, like groove thing going on.
I can hear that, and I agree with that, and I think that's a good comparison.
Yeah, I hope so. Like I kind of the riff, the like da 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 da. When I came up with that, I think I was trying to come up with a riff that sounded like there's a kind of legendary like UK DIY band called Cowtown. They're also based in Leeds, but they've been around like 20 years, and it's one of those bands that like they've never gotten big. I think because they probably don't want to get big, but they've just been around doing their thing for like 20 years. And I think I was trying to write like a Cowtown riff, basically.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like fun song, and it's got a bunch of stuff going on in the lyrics. There's like, "Do It Badly" has kind of become like a bit of a catchphrase in my house. Me and my fiance Sarah, like, I think she's someone who often struggles to like just do something. I think she like tends to like think about something a lot to a point that she like gets stuck in just thinking about it, and sometimes it's like
analysis paralysis to a certain degree.
Yeah, and so I can't remember where I read this, but I like read this idea that like if something is worth doing, then it's worth doing badly. I.e., if the options are either to do it badly or not do it at all, then you should do it badly. If it's if it's important.
Right.
So that's become like a catchphrase in our house. In fact, we have like a big canvas on the wall of our bedroom that says "Do It Badly." That's been there since before I wrote this song. I hasten to add. But like, yes, it's partly about that, and kind of related to that, it's partly about this like sort of like malicious compliance, like deliberately doing something badly just to fuck with someone. So there's this whole end section about where I'm chanting "pint of Guinness in a Madry glass," which I don't know. I feel like Madry might not have made it over to the US, but it's like a particular brand of lager.
Okay.
I was trying to come up with like, if you were working in a bar and you were trying to like fuck with a customer, what would be the funniest combination of beer and glass that you could serve someone? And I decided that the funniest combination was Guinness in a Madry glass.
Oh, got it. Okay. All right.
So that's like kind of about this malicious compliance, and then there's all kinds of stupid stuff in there about like my cat having an abscess on his back.
Oof.
And some stuff about which members of the cast of The Office are CIA assets, and just like
Carell or Gervais.
Both. So so I read a while ago, and I'm not necessarily saying I buy into this. I just think it's funny. I read this theory, a conspiracy theory a while ago that both. Oh God, I can't even think the actors' names off the top of my head, but like the guy who plays Jim in the US Office, like who's now
Krasinski.
Yeah, John Krasinski, that's it. John Krasinski and like Martin, whatever he's called, who played the same character in
Martin
the UK
Freeman.
version, Martin Freeman, that's it, have both kind of made their name for themselves playing this like everyman character in The Office, and then have gone on to playing like sort of a wartime hero, like spy roles. And there was like a conspiracy theory that like
Krasinski does
they're-
Jack Ryan, and Freeman is in the MCU. He's the freaking he's like that agent guy, right? So,
Yeah,
I can't
and so
remember
it's
the character's
like-
name, but
There was this conspiracy theory basically that like they were CIA assets who'd been deliberately placed, having like built up this reputation as like this sort of relatable everyman,
Cultural
then going
cachet.
into that role,
uh-huh.
and it being like this sort of forcing people to like relate to and identify with the Jack Ryan style character. Which I'm not saying necessarily I buy into that, but I think it's a really compelling idea that like the CIA would be putting money into hire specifically like getting Martin Freeman and John Krasinski into like
right.
spy roles in order to like draw that like link, in order to force the viewer to subconsciously link the like everyman that they previously were with.
It seems like a lot of effort, and I think a lot of conspiracies give far too much credit to the level of effort willing to be put into by the conspirators. Where it's like, no, that's too much work. They're not going to do that. But that is kind of funny to think about, though.
Oh yeah, it's like I think it's quite unlikely, but it's compelling, and so there's a whole bit about that basically.
Fantastic. I never even
all
thought
over the
about
place.
Freeman and Krasinski both doing like, hey, isn't foreign intervention cool?
Yeah, yeah,
like vibes. It's like both those guys did.
Yeah, exactly.
Both guys who made their career like just like coming back in the camera and doing it. Can you believe this kind of like face?
Yeah,
so that's great.
Get a load of this guy.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Anything else for Do It Badly, or is that?
No, I think that's it.
The Spores is fourth song.
The Spores, I think, is probably my favorite song on the record. I wrote the main riff for this one, and I was trying to do like a kind of a Frankenchrist era, like Dead Kennedys kind of riff.
Yeah.
In practice, it's turned into more of like a Sabbath thing, but that's cool as well.
Yeah.
And it's been like a live staple of ours for a long time. I think it's one of the first ones we wrote for this album. And I'm just really pleased with how it turned out on the record. Like when we play this live, it's one of those ones that kind of descends into chaos towards the end, and like gradually just becomes this like wall of noise. And we did the like descending into chaos thing on the record, where it's kind of like, oh, the song is like melting and falling apart. Mm-hmm. But instead of it going into this wall of noise, it kind of turns into, it's almost like an ambient track that it turns into by the end, which is something we've never really done previously, and was really fun. And I kind of, I like the fact that we've kind of taken this idea that when we play it live, it does just kind of fall apart. Mm-hmm. But instead of doing it that way, it's like, instead of it turning into this wall of noise, it's like actually quite like a soothing, like ambient piece.
Right.
And just another fun one, and one where, you might not be aware that like I used to just do vocals in Thank, and then
I was aware of that actually, even though I'd not seen you play. I was aware that was a thing. Yeah.
So I used to just do vocals, and then Thoughtless Cruelty was the first time where I had played guitar as well.
Yeah.
And even when we were recording that, there was a bit of a question mark over whether I would still play guitar live. But I did, and then it's kind of, that's just become a thing now that I do play guitar as well. But I think The Spores is one where like having like the two guitar thing really kind of comes into its own. And it's, we're rocking out, baby.
Well, and there's something there's something with that too. There's people's interpretation of what's happening live as being, if they see someone just singing, the natural thing, people, oh, well, that person doesn't contribute to the music. They just do like the lyrics, which is mortifying for anybody that does write music, where it's like, no, I'm doing this thing. I can't do it. And that can be, and that's a dichotomy of a band as a creative unit, creating music and presenting that live, and they're different skills, but there is a bit of a stigma when you're the front person.
Sure, and I think
poor oppressed front people is what I'm trying to say. But I used to get kind of irritated by that in a previous band where I chose not to play guitar live. It's like, I'd be shocked how much of this comes from me.
Yeah. Well,
And I do move gear, and I do all the driving.
Like Damien from St. Pierre Snake Invasion, I think he writes like all the riffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Exact perfect
like
example.
certainly
Yeah.
I'll say most of the riffs. I don't want to upset anyone else in that band who maybe has written some riffs, but I think Damien writes most of them.
Right.
Yeah, and so for me, it was just like with the writing, because I was like the main songwriter, which, like I say, it's become more collaborative now anyway. But certainly a few years ago, I was like the main songwriter, and it just felt like there was this disconnect where it was like, I'm not playing an instrument when we play live, but I'm trying to write stuff, and it just felt like I'd kind of lost this sort of tactile connection to the band, and it just felt like starting to play guitar maybe would heal that wound, and I think it did. Yeah.
Well, and there's also, I think people also sometimes overestimate the amount of interest there is from the average music listener about literally any of that. But for me, it always is. I tend not to assume things. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Like, who knows how any band operates? How does any band operate? Why does any band operate?
To this day, I still don't know how any band I've been in has operated.
Right, exactly. It's all a freaking. To say it's a balancing act is, almost giving it too much credit.
Yeah.
It's chaos theory personified. So anyway, so the Spores. Anything else?
I think that just about covers it.
Okay, fair enough. How about Down with the Sickness?
Down with the Sickness. So yeah, as you may have noticed, it does share a name with a Disturbed song, which
I'm
is
familiar. Yeah,
something that I thought would be amusing, and I think I was right. I think it is. But yeah, that one was like, I'm super into the Mortis album, The Smell of Rain. I don't know if you know Mortis.
I'm vaguely familiar, but
he's mainly like a dungeon synth guy.
I was gonna say, I think I know about him from John from the Sandriders and all that. Well, he has Nuclear Dudes, which is his sort of like dungeon synth kind of black metal side project thing.
So Mortis is primarily.
Thank you. You want to talk about name dropping earlier? There was no reason to drop that name. Sorry.
I'm glad you did. Yeah, so I was really into that Mortis record, but that album isn't really dungeon synth. That album is like him doing like New Order style synth pop.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
It's a really odd record. But Down with the Sickness, the main idea from that was me wanting to write something that sounded like that Mortis album, The Smell of Rain.
Right.
Which I think it kind of does, maybe. The lyrics also kind of borrow from a Big Black song. I think it might be El Dopa. It's a Big Black song. I'd have to check, but it borrows a couple of, or like half borrows a couple of lyrics from that song. For all the noise rock fans out there.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry, there's cred here. Don't worry about it.
But yeah, it's just like, interestingly, this was one that when we wrote it, I was kind of like, oh yeah, that'll be a single for the album. But then we just wrote so many more good singles. I was like, well, I guess not. Which is a very nice position to be in. I feel like with this record, out of the 10 songs, like, probably, I don't know, 1, 2, 3. I feel like probably like 7 or 8 of them could have been singles to my mind, which is like a very nice position to be in. Sometimes it's like, oh god, all of these songs are like impenetrable apart from this one. I guess this is the one single.
I guess by extension, that's the single. Yeah, I mean that is a nice thing to have, for sure.
Absolutely.
Maybe you'll get some people looking for the other song that listen to this song too. That's always possible.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it. Maybe we can win over some fans. It's a bit like, I'm not really a Fall Out Boy fan, but I'm pretty sure Fall Out Boy had a song called Thriller, which is a very funny thing to do.
It is a funny thing to do. Yeah.
Just good crack. And then barely the next one. That is so there was a point where I was convinced that the next Thank record should be like a Tears for Fears inspired like synth pop record.
Oh wow. Okay.
Like I sometimes have these grand ideas and they don't necessarily play out, but this song Barely, I would say, is the one song that came out of that era of me wanting us to become a Tears for Fears style.
It was so Barely was your was your Tears for Fears not sound alike. What am I thinking about? Like-minded.
Yeah, it's like
entry.
It was basically like me trying to write a song that sounded like it could be on Songs from the Big Chair.
Sure. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
But then obviously all the other guys then kind of brought their stuff in. So it probably doesn't sound very much like Songs from the Big Chair, but I think if you go into it, if you go into it knowing that was something I had in mind, I think you could probably recognize some elements.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was funny. I actually had some time back had Karina Round, who plays in Pucifer, on, and she actually played with Tears for Fears, like doing that album, and she's an incredible vocalist. She's actually
so she was like a backing vocalist for them.
Yeah, and her solo work is fantastic as well. It doesn't sound anything like Pucifer. It's very very cool on its own. But yeah, like I definitely it was like, can I press you for some details about this, please? And she was happy to talk about it, and it was great because that
sounds amazing.
It's weird to think about. It's weird to think about it, but it's also not, because if you just think about it in terms of like, well, she's a cracking vocalist, like she's like very good at these kinds of things. Obviously, it's very like huge sounding consonant music. Like it makes why not? Great.
Yeah, that's actually, I have to admit, I haven't really listened to Pucifer, but knowing that is making me interested to check them out. If they're a noise rock band whose vocalist has toured with Tears for Fears, that seems like exactly the kind of thing that I'd be interested in.
It's not boring, I'll tell you that much. I
can believe it.
I like them. It's like I think anything that involves Maynard James Keenan, like you're gonna have, those kinds of fans, and that's and that's annoying. But like Jeff, Jeff Friedel, who plays drums in that band, he's the drummer for Devo now. Like straight up the drummer for Devo, because what's his face, Freese, joined the Foo Fighters.
Yes.
So it's funny. But it's like, like that's a guy that, he's a very multi-talented individual. But yeah, Pucifer's interesting. They're cool. Like it's something that I can't say I was, other than knowing that they existed, I was super familiar with until like the opportunity to have Karina on. I was like, oh, let me like dig a little deeper. And I was like, hey, this is pretty good. Like if I just heard this blind, I'd be like, this is a good band. Like who's in this? Google. Oh, the guy from Tool.
Okay. That guy. All right. Whatever.
And they did this great COVID thing where they did a live show at the Arcasani in Arizona,
right,
which is this architectural marvel of like sustainable living, and it basically more or less like you could have it on Mars or like the moon or something along those lines. And it's a really beautiful, special, bizarre looking place. And they did a whole like live show there because they couldn't do it was like peak COVID, so they couldn't do an actual release show. And I was like, oh, that's like super cool. That's a cool rich guy thing to do.
Hell yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
If you've got it, if you got the money to do it, why not?
Sounds great. Sign me up.
One of my favorite sort of COVID like live gigs was a Scooter, the like German techno band. Did a live streamed gig that was incredible, because there's like a song in their set, I think it's literally just called Fire, where they all shoot flamethrowers out of their guitars and stuff.
Oh, brilliant.
Fucking sick.
Yeah, it sounds great. Sounds like real kiss
I
antics.
remember just being sat in my living room, like having not left
you're
the house
not
for
in any physical
3 weeks
danger.
or whatever, just being like, this is great.
Yeah.
I'm glad this is happening.
Yeah, I don't have to dodge this particular flame though, so that's also great. Cool. Smiling Politely is the next song.
Smiling Politely is like kind of an interlude rather than like a song. Although I don't know, that's maybe underselling it. It's another one we were talking before about like stealing your own lyrics from other songs.
Yeah, sure.
So the lyrics from Smiling Politely, this is maybe like the fourth song I've attempted to include some of these lyrics in that have kind of, from previous projects or whatever that haven't necessarily gotten anywhere. So like, in fact, there was a song that we wrote for Thoughtless Cruelty called The Trooper. Again, me trying to just take song titles from other bands. There's a song that we wrote for Thoughtless Cruelty called The Trooper that had some lyrics that are now in Smiling Politely. But even before The Trooper, they were in at least two other songs of mine that never really got anywhere. And now finally, I won't be able to steal these lyrics from myself again because they're finally being committed to wax.
It's definitively used in this one, yeah.
But it's like, it's a fun tune. Interestingly, the initial idea for this song came from Theo, who was the synth player who left Thank a little while ago.
Okay.
Who's still good friends of ours, but he honestly, he pretty much left because we were getting too successful. Not that we're that successful, but he really just wants to play to 20 freaks in a basement, and playing to like a couple of hundred people was like really stressing him out. So he left the band. But Smiling Politely, the original idea was him, but actually the version that's on the album, and this isn't like deliberate that we've done this to like spite him. None of the original ideas that he brought, because it was originally his song, but nothing from that original song is still in it. It is entirely, it's like a proper like Ship of Theseus thing.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Literally nothing
not original.
Not one single element of that song is still in it.
Sure, yeah.
But it did start out as a song that Theo brought in. The drum pattern, I feel like Steve's gonna kill me for telling you this, but I think it's really funny. The drum pattern is lifted from a Mudvayne song.
Mudvayne? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like not that, like it's like changed a bit, but it's like, it's basically like got
just enough to avoid litigation. Sure. Yeah.
The feel, like the drum feel, is like loosely based on a Mudvayne song, which I think is very funny.
What a bummer of a sentence that is for me, but I appreciate it. Looks good on you. Yeah.
Yeah. I hasten to add, I'm not I wouldn't consider myself a Mudvayne fan necessarily, but I don't think it's very funny to incorporate Mudvayne into a Thank song.
Well, certainly the drums are the least odious thing for that band. So I mean,
sure. I'm gonna start wearing clown makeup on the next Thank tour.
Oh man. Dead Dog in a Ditch. So we talked about that one, the double A side single, of course. So a different recording of this, but
so basically the whole time we've been playing this song live, I feel like every time we play it, it just gets faster and faster and faster and faster. And so by the time we were getting to record the album, we were like, we play this song live so much, it's like a proper live staple. It'd be nice to have it on the album, but A, production-wise, this album is going to sound a lot different to the 7-inch, and B, this just doesn't sound anything like how we play it now. So let's re-record. So it's like,
right.
We seem to have started like a tradition of including a sped up version of a previously released song on our albums, because Thoughtless Cruelty had a punching bag off, which was on our first tape, but then Thoughtless Cruelty just has a faster version of it, and similarly we've done a faster. So I guess at one point I really liked the idea of, because to be honest, the way we play punching bag now is even faster still than the version on Thoughtless Cruelty. So I did quite like the idea of like, because some people, I think, because not everyone realized that Thankology was like a compilation. I think some people kind of just thought of it as an album,
Yeah.
and so then when
I won't lie,
Punching
I
Bag-
didn't at first either, because I didn't know
I
who
mean,
you
I
guys
get
were.
it.
So
Yeah, like how would you know? But so the fact that Punching Bag was also track 3 on Thoughtless Cruelty, some people were quite annoyed about that. So at one point, I was really into the idea of having Punching Bag track 3 again on this
and
album,
an even faster version this
even
time.
faster still. And I kind of wish I'd stuck with that, but alas.
That's some long game thinking, my friend. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah. But yeah, Dead Dog. It's like the 7-inch version, but it's a lot faster. Is all I can really say about it.
Fair enough. Perhaps today.
This was kind of based on. There's like an evangelical Christian organization called Perhaps Today, which is the premise of it is like that the rapture could happen any day, perhaps today.
Yeah.
And I got really fascinated with, if you go on their website, I don't remember how I stumbled upon this, but if you go on their website, they've got like loads of videos that they call pre-enactments, which is basically like them.
I get it. Yeah.
Them like predicting.
We think it's going to go like this. Yeah.
Predicting how the rapture will go, and it's
yeah.
all like stuff like. So there's one that's like a school bus, and it's like there's like a flash of light, and suddenly all the kids on the school bus have disappeared because they've been raptured, but the driver, I guess, must have been a sinner because he's still there. Or like there's one where it's like parents like filming their kid on the swings in a park, and then the kid disappears and like, oh my god. And it's like I just got really obsessed with these pre-enactment videos. I couldn't really work out what the purpose of them was, but lyrically that's what that song is about.
Vision boarding? I don't know.
Yeah, it was about these pre-enactment videos.
Wow.
And yeah, musically it's like kind of a fun one. It feels like I don't think vocally it's necessarily like that melodic compared to a lot of other stuff, but like musically I think it's one of the most melodic things they've done. It kind of like, I mean, clearly it doesn't sound anything like Coldplay, but it's one of those things that like when we were recording it, there was a point in the studio when we were recording it where we were like, there's like a bit towards the end where it gets really like soaring, and we were like, does this just sound like fucking like Yellow by Coldplay?
Oh my god, yeah, that's like that's the horrifying like thing you must ask yourself sometimes when you're going that route. Yeah.
And I don't think it does, but it's just close enough that I can see how we managed to partially convince ourselves that maybe it did sound like Coldplay.
That's fantastic. And then you're closing out the record with writing out a list of all the names of God. Tell me about that.
So I think this was the last song we wrote, and it's kind of the one we were maybe most excited about. We were all just like so excited about this when we wrote it. It's the first time we've managed to like fully incorporate. So like Steve, our current drummer, is like really into jungle. And this was like the first time we've managed to like properly incorporate like jungle elements into a song. So that was really fun. And yeah, it's just really, I'm like terrible for always wanting everything to be slower. I always want to slow everything down. And like since Steve joined the band like 3 years ago, he always wants to speed everything up. And it's been a very interesting power struggle. And I think ultimately what I have to concede is that actually most of the time he is right, that stuff is better when it's faster. But I always want everything slower. But so there's like quite a few songs on this record. So Writing Out a List of All Names of God, Dead Dog in a Ditch, Do It Badly, that are just like way faster than I would have ever intended them to be. And it's really great. Like it's really good to have things that fast. It's just like breakneck jungle drumming stuff. And yeah, it just had to be the album closer. We felt a bit like there was some discussion of, I can't remember which album it is, but there's a Death Grips album where the closing track is called Death Grips 2.0, and it kind of is like totally at odds with the rest of the record, and it kind of signposted where they would go with their next album.
Yeah.
And
It's like a preview almost or something.
I feel like there was some Lewis kind of had this idea that like writing out a list of all names of God maybe was kind of that of it being like a maybe a signpost of what we'll do next. But it's hard to say. We've kind of started writing some new stuff, but none of it is finished enough for me to say
Sure.
whether or not that
whether that's total BS or just partial BS.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which is really the sweet spot, I would say.
Yeah.
For that
What
kind of thing. If you don't know yourself, then
how can anyone find any joy in life without at least some bullshit? Where would we be without bullshit?
Where would we be indeed? Anyway, great album closer. This is the album cover. This is the album cover. Sorry for the audio listeners. It's the album cover of "I Have a Physical Body." That can be harmed. Tell me about this album cover because it's a bold choice. What is that? Pineapple like demon? There's frog eyes.
It's like a sort of puppet made of a pineapple and various bones being puppeteered by some frogs, and it seems to have like caught a fish.
Yeah.
This is a painting by a guy called Nick Sheehy.
Okay.
Who, we were kind of really going back and forth for a long time over what we wanted to do for the artwork for this record. We were going to do something ourselves initially because, like, Steve, drummer, is like a really talented illustrator, and like I do like bits and pieces of like digital art and stuff. And we had some various ideas of stuff we were going to do ourselves in house, but then Steve has been a big fan of Nick Sheehy for a long time, and the idea of just like licensing one of his paintings got floated. We kind of all collectively looked through his like works, found this one that really seemed to resonate with all of us, and we got in touch with him, and he was up for it. Thematically, I don't know if it necessarily links with the album specifically, but it's just a pretty mad looking painting. I don't know what
it's not going to be something anyone forgets anytime soon. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's just like it's great, and it kind of I love the sort of uncanniness of like Nick's work is mostly paintings.
Yeah,
but I love that they do kind of. There's something uncanny where it looks almost like PlayStation graphics or something.
Oh, sure. Like this, I've played this video game.
About
absolutely.
It's just some freak shit.
Just some freak shit indeed. Well, again, I think it catches the attention for sure. And I think it's a great record. So I hope people that know the band probably are already going to check it out. But I hope folks that enjoy the show can will take the time to check it out and give it a listen. I think it's your best record yet. So
me too. I'm glad you agree. Yeah, thanks, man. Really excited for it to get out into the world.
So there you go. We've done it. We finally did it. It took a long time, but I think it was worth the effort. Freddy, it's been great having you on the show. It's been a pleasure going over all of the history of the band and various derivations and sidebars thereof. You know the show. It's what we do.
Yeah, I can only apologize. Who wants to just hear me talking about the album?
No, it's boring. Let's let's hear about. Although it is good to hear that Mudvayne inspired a good drum.
Exactly. So that's the headline. You can put that in the blurb for the for the podcast. Freddie Vinehill-Cliffe from Thank comes and talks to us about his new Mudvayne inspired record.
Oh my god!
There you go. But no, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Really I know. Great to have you. Anytime. And last question is only canned question I ever ask for the show, and you can choose to interpret it however you like. But why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? I feel like it's, to some extent, it's a sunk cost fallacy. I've been playing in bands since I was like 14. After a while, you're like, well, I've been doing this for so long. Surely I can't give up now. But no, I would say sincerely, being on stage with Thank is like one of one of the few times that I'm like fully just, it's one of the times where life feels its most meaningful. I feel very lucky to be able to play with this band. I feel really lucky to be playing with Lewis and Cameron and Steve. And yeah, I love playing these songs, and it's a very special thing, and it's a lot of fun. And if it ever stops being fun, then I will stop. But right now, it's good.
Glad to hear it. Freddy, thank you so much, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks a lot.
Until next time.
Cheers.
There he goes. Freddy from Thank. I'm going to close out with a song from the new record. This is, you know what? We're going to do It Badly, is what we're going to do. So this is Do It Badly.
I took my best go out for the night. We went to see a film and we went for a bite. I said this is what we call the 3 C's. The 3 C's are culture, cuisine and kissing. I took my cat to the vet with a lump. They gave him antibiotics and drained out all the gunk. I said this is what we call the 3 B's. The 3 B's are blood and bile and abscesses. I want the kind of fame where I can become a CIA asset. Be every day, every man, turn action hero, a universally beloved and relatable towering Adonis, a bronze god. I want to ride the Twin Peaks Tower, make your mother pipeline. I'm Ray Wise, and you are Ray extremely daft. Do it badly, you can do it badly. Do it badly, you can. It's allowed, it's allowed, it's allowed. You can do better than no one can prove it. Do it badly, you can do it badly. Do it badly, you can. It's allowed, it's allowed, it's allowed. You can do better than no one can prove it. Do it badly. Do it badly, you can do it badly. Do it badly, you can. It's allowed, it's allowed, it's allowed. You can do better than no one can prove it. Do it badly, you can do it badly. Do it badly, you can. It's allowed, it's allowed, it's allowed. You can do better than no one can prove it. Do it badly. And your dad was having the greatest day of his life. Burger and car moment after burger and car moment. No longer a baby boy, but a baby man. Until tragedy struck and he was served. Better get it to the laundry glass. 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 Do it badly.
There you go. That is off I Have a Physical Body That Can Be Harmed by the band Thank. The name of that song is Do It Badly. It's one of the singles off of the record. May or may not be out at the time of your listening, depending when you engage with this. Shipping out on or around November 8th, 2024. So that was Freddy from Thank. So glad to have him on. He's very patient with me. Long time. We started talking about that. Name of the show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you so ever very much for listening to it. This show airs usually Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific, streaming live on YouTube and Twitch. Podcasted later everywhere, always free, no ads, no sponsors, no kidding. ProtonicReversal.com for those archives. $1 a month at patreon.com/ProtonicReversal gets you early access to the episodes, of which there's starting to be quite the backlog. And helps me pay for this flying circus, so it's appreciated for folks that do that. Please consider joining if you haven't already. Thanks to everyone for liking the show on various social media outlets and subscribing on your platform of choice, sharing it around on this big, bold, wide internet that we have. And just supporting the show. Thanks for listening as well. This show doesn't have big money behind it, so it's how anybody finds out about it. What's coming up? Let's see. Carl Shane of Cal Marx coming up this week. Stoked for that. That should be awesome. Got the Sugar Horse fellows coming up as well. Oh, Conan Neutron Secret Friends Detroit with God Bullies, Smalls, Hamtramck, Friday the 11th. If you're listening to this on Patreon.
Turn sound into electricity.
Lots of cool stuff, man. Thanks for sticking with it. Stay safe out there.
Can you hear me now?
We'll check you later.
Out on Route 128, in the dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on Earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl! It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on.